Okay, so welcome everyone, and thank you so much for joining. We're super excited to have Nathan here with us to discuss about product management. So we'll just jump straight to the conversation, and again, we super excited to have you here, Nathan. Thank you so much for sharing your time and wisdom with us. And I'll start just by like asking you to tell us more about you and about your journey.
Yeah. Well, happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Albug. When you reached out, I thought it'd be kind of a cool opportunity to share what I've learned in my experience in product management. So hopefully this is a helpful and educational lesson for all of your kind of colleagues here. I guess I'll kind of start off with a little bit of kind of how I got into product management. Is that kind of the prompt and how I can get started? Sure thing. So it really kind of started off when I joined Postmates. I joined Postmates. For those of you who are not familiar, it was an on-demand delivery company. I joined them in, I think, late 2013, so about a decade ago, really in kind of a hybrid product and analytics role. It was a very small company at the time, probably about 20-ish people. There were no product managers. We really just had kind of like analysts and engineers. And being a very kind of young, scrappy startup that was really kind of going through kind of hockey stick growth. Like we were, increasing sales something like 5-10% per week, which is a very, very kind of fun environment to be in. There was just a lot of opportunity and things we had to work on, and just not a lot of people to work on it. So, when I initially came to the company working on a lot of like analysis and helping expand new markets, it became very clear from talking to a lot of customers in those markets that the kind of the product that we had rolled out, which if you can kind of imagine a 2013 delivery app, very rudimentary, not the most kind of feature rich or sophisticated, was really kind of problematic in different markets. And I'll give you kind of an example. We started out in San Francisco and kind of built the product for San Francisco, which is geographically actually very much like a square. It's kind of like a 7x7 square. And so a lot of our pricing was really based on birds flight like distances. So we did basically a distance and time pricing, pretty similar to Uber at the time. This pricing model actually really did not work out well in different cities. I'm actually from Seattle. If anyone here has been to Seattle, you'll note there's a lot of hills, there's a lot of waterways, and it's very kind of complicated to go from kind of point A to point B. There we go. We got a shout out for Seattle here. I love that. It's very kind of complicated to go to point A to point B. And one of the big issues we had is that we have downtown Seattle and West Seattle. These are two kind of major metropolitan or pockets within the city. It's only about a mile and a half between each points. Unfortunately, there's a big body of water between those 2 points. And so all of our customers on West Seattle would see, oh my God, here's all of these restaurant items from my favorite downtown Seattle locations, and the delivery fee is only $5. I want it. Like that's a great offer. That's a wonderful fee for having these products delivered. The issue was that none of the couriers on the supply side would accept those orders because it'd probably be a 45-minute drive to go all the way around the Puget Sound to deliver that product. And there was a huge customer problem there. And so this is something I had kind of intimate experience with. I worked with the engineering team on localizing our pricing algorithm so that it wasn't just crow's flight, but it was actually much more so related to actually the drive and travel time. So that's kind of one of the first features I worked on. In San Francisco, we had a lot of issues with our courier. I'm using couriers kind of the supply side of Postmates. We had issues with couriers kind of being out of location throughout the time that basically throughout during the kind of peak hours. We had couriers who our demand, if you can imagine it, for food is pretty predictable, actually. Like we have people who order food for lunch and people who order food for dinner. And there's kind of a smattering of orders that come through at random times throughout the day. And a lot of these orders are actually somewhat predictable by location. This was actually 2013, 2014. It's a little bit different than maybe kind of the post-COVID world, but there was, a lot of ordering for lunch in downtown and a lot of ordering for dinner in kind of the more residential areas. And so one of the features I worked on was to really help kind of within our courier application to give them kind of a heat map of where the orders were coming from so that they could basically place themselves well to be in position when the orders would come and kind of give them that intelligence to kind of, locate themselves well. And so this is kind of a couple examples of how I kind of entered into product management, where I was working on these markets. I identified opportunities primarily through our customers and the customer stakeholders and people who worked with our couriers as well, and then worked with our engineering teams on actually building these features out. And after doing, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 different versions of this, and in addition to my other responsibilities, I thought, I actually really like this. This is much more interesting and fun than just kind of pure analytics. And so that's I try to transition much more into that, into more like feature development and product management. And then soon after that, I actually just kind of pursued pure product management at other companies. So that's kind of the long-winded answer of how I got into it.
Yeah, thanks. And I'm curious, talking a little bit about the university, if there were specific courses that really helped you during the journey that like when you got to deal with some specific challenges, you recalled, like one professor talking about specific concepts. I remember if you remember some of those.
Yeah, great question. So, I mean, I hate to say this to a Berkeley class because I did go to the other school in the Bay Area. I won't mention names here. There were some classes there that actually I found very, very helpful. There, a few kind of come to mind. They were kind of the more advanced economics classes. One is really focused on internet business models. So like SaaS, freemium, all these types of models I learned kind of in an academic context. It's a funny comment. Thank you, Alejandro. I learned a lot about the business models and a lot about the kind of the technology that suits those business models well. That was something that was very helpful. I think just to give me kind of a broader sense of technology. And then, as it relates to product management, a lot of kind of the analytics classes I took, product management is kind of a multifaceted job. There's a lot of different responsibilities. One of those is really being able to understand kind of customer insights, be able to pull insights from large data sets, and really be able to manipulate data in ways that's very helpful, like to help you understand kind of the opportunity. And so classes I had taken in econometrics and kind of statistical analysis, and then even some of those classes actually dealt a lot with like in-person surveying and things like that. So those were helpful tools that I found that were very useful to me. One thing, this might be somewhat controversial. One thing, I took a handful of computer science classes as well. Ultimately didn't find those to be the most important at getting started with product management. I think as you become a little bit more advanced in product management, that those courses actually are very helpful. But didn't find that kind of basic web development or anything like that was really helpful to maybe kind of a junior level PM. It could be helpful if you're trying to transition into that role, and I'm sure we can talk more about this later. But that was kind of surprising. Like what was most helpful to me, kind of transitioning, like getting my first start in product management, were the the acute understanding of the customer pain point and being able to translate those pain points into kind of real product solutions. So being able to work with engineering and design on kind of rolling out a solution that would address the pain point that was identified.
Thanks. And I have another question in terms of domain expertise, right? So it's like when a lot of people are applying for product management positions, a lot of those positions are talking about the domain expertise. I've seen you worked for many industries. So I'm kind of like curious to hear your thoughts about the importance of domain expertise, specifically for the first product management job, and then like how you can take the product management job or the experience in general and then apply to different industries.
Yeah, great question. Domain expertise, I think, is actually very important when you are kind of getting your start in product management. If you don't have like a product management background, I'll kind of give examples of that. So, if you are kind of coming in within a company, I've been a part of a lot of these hiring decisions as well, of like people who are trying to lateral into product management roles from maybe the teams that they are supporting. It is actually very helpful if you really know the kind of customer pain points and like can really speak to them. That is a significant advantage. And the product management like broadly involves being able to work with engineering, being able to work with design, being able to work with business executives and customers. Engineering is one component, but just one of those multiple components. So very localized expertise in the problem field, I think is a huge value add. Now, again, if you are, say, coming from just the engineering side or like something else, trying to transition to product management, it is very helpful to have some, product fundamentals, whether that is some type of certification or, you've done, you're a lot of research, or you even kind of worked closely with a PM at the company that you're looking to kind of take a role with. Any type of like mentorship opportunity that you can get from working with the PM, kind of seeing their day to day. that's very helpful too. But kind of I think to the second part of your question, like as you kind of advance in your career, in speaking from my own experience, once I had kind of solid product fundamentals, product management at most tech companies these days is actually a somewhat similar process. Most companies are using agile methodologies. You're running, biweekly sprints. You're, kind of using kind of the same documentation. You're probably using the same software. You're probably using either Asana or Jira. I think like 99% of companies use one of those right now. And so the kind of fundamentals are very similar. And it helps to have some insight onto the company that you're applying or the industry. But if you can demonstrate success doing similar type of work, even if it's in a different industry, that is, in many cases should be sufficient to try to land, a role. You might be hard to, join, be a chief product officer at a ad tech company from coming from, a fashion company. Like that's probably not going to happen. Like there's kind of at the higher level, there's a lot more intricacies that, you pick up from, a lot of experience in an industry. But if you want to transition from like a PM into one field into a PM into another like industry, for example, like it's quite feasible. Just make sure to kind of convey the overlap in skills that you can kind of bring to both roles.
And in terms of the technical skills, and you talked about it a little bit. So some companies say that it's like a must to have technical background for product management positions. Some say it's not required at all. I'm curious to hear your thoughts about the ideal balance between soft skills and technical skills, and the importance of technical skills for a product manager.
Yeah, great question. I definitely think that there's a happy medium there. PMs and people in product should not be unfamiliar with the tech stack that they're working on, they're supporting. And I don't think they should just kind of like throw things over the wall to their engineering team, like, hey, can you build this feature? And like really not have an intimate understanding of what's being built. I think that's actually a big flaw. So I would definitely index on, trying to get some basic tech skills yourself. You don't have to be, a great, full stack developer or anything like that, but like truly understand like the components of the applications that you're going to be working on. Like, is it an API? Is it a backend application? Is it a front end application or a full stack application? Well, whatever it might be, or even like some AI technologies. Truly understand like how that works. Now you don't have to be kind of writing the code or debugging it, but like understand like what the engineering team is doing. And I think you'll find though that expertise really helps you in conversations with engineering teams on what to build, kind of the architecture discussions that you'll probably be a part of. And really helping with that kind of the trade-offs in the decisioning on and how you build things. And if you don't know anything about how the system is being built, you don't really have much valuable feedback to offer in those conversations. And so as kind of a general rule of thumb for testing early products, you want to build somewhat scrappy. You want to probably not build the most robust solution at first, but if you don't know like what that entails, like you're really kind of dependent on everyone else's perspective, and I think it kind of puts you at a bit of a step down and as a PM.
So talking about engineering and engineers specifically, it's very common kind of like meme that product managers and engineers not getting along very well. So I'm kind of I'm kind of like curious to hear your thoughts in terms of like conflict management and working with stakeholders, specifically with engineering, between the boundaries, because obviously engineering teams, they don't like when like a product manager comes and says like, okay, you should use this tech stack, and there should be kind of like boundaries between the two. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts specifically around the conflicts, right, between engineering and product.
Yeah, it's kind of funny you mentioned it. There certainly can be conflicts between product and engineering, and I think that it kind of it's a good parlay from the previous conversation about having technical skills. I think you got to view a lot of the conversations with your collaborators, whether it's on engineering and design, as like open discussions, and not kind of conversations where you're very prescriptive, like, hey, we have this feature, this is how it needs to be built. You have engineers at your company to help you with those decisions and help lend their expertise in that area to help kind of give you options on how you can build this service. And so I wouldn't presuppose any solution on kind of your engineering or design team immediately. You got to give these teams a little bit of latitude to kind of help with the discovery phase. I would actually include engineer and designers kind of in the latter part of the discovery phase, so they understand like what you're looking to build, and so they can help kind of think about options. So again, I wouldn't be very prescriptive with them. I think there is a point where say, hey, we have a feature we need to build. This has been aligned across kind of the business organizations. Then you kind of approach your engineers like, hey, what are options and how we want to build it? Like what's kind of the path of least resistance? Like what's the kind of the quickest options to get this out? Like how does that set us up for long-term tech debt? Those are just kind of open conversations that you have. And then ultimately, hopefully you and the engineering manager or whoever your engineering lead we'll make a kind of collaborative discussion that's best for the company.
Thanks. And shifting a little bit to the interviewing part, where it's probably very relevant to this discussion for us. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts about the process, specifically in terms of like from the very starting point, from the resume, like when you're reading resumes, like what kind of things you're looking for, and what kind of like common mistakes you're seeing on resumes that you think people should avoid. And I'll have more questions, but let's start with the resume one.
Yeah. Okay. On resumes, I'll let everyone in on a little secret here. The people reviewing your resume have probably spent somewhere between 15 and 30 seconds looking at your resume. It's not going to be the most significant part of the application. They'll probably, I mean, I'll speak from my own experience and conversations I've had with other PMs. They'll look for a couple keywords, see where you've worked before, and then generally what you've worked on. That's gonna be kind of a very quick glance. So I just try to convey that information, in a very aesthetic way on your resume, and then just be prepared to talk about your experiences, in each of those roles that are on your resume. So I guess to summarize, like the resume is important. It'll probably get you noticed from recruiters, but it's not going to be what gets you opportunities in PM interviews. And honestly, I've never seen it really as like the critical deciding factor during interviews. It's usually just like a guide that most PMs will come in, most interviewers will come in with questions of their own. Most of them will not be based on your resume experience, but they'll probably ask you to tie your resume experience into those questions. And I'm happy to kind of go into what some of those questions might be and whatnot, but yeah.
And when candidates get to the point of like the interview, and when you're interviewing them, what kind of like traits and skills you're looking for in like the ideal candidate?
Yeah, so that definitely varies company to company. So it'd be hard to kind of tell you, every company wants this type of person. What I would say is just as a kind of tactic when you're going into these interviews, most of the time you're not going to talk to the product manager first. That's likely going to be the second or third round of the interview if it's for a PM role. Your initial conversations will likely be with the recruiter. Those recruiter interviews, take them seriously. Like there's a lot of good, I think actually maybe more important than what they tell you is the questions that you can ask them of specifically, what is this team looking for? Like what are they building? What is kind of the tech stack that they're building on? What are kind of the big opportunities with this team? I think it one shows the recruiter that you're very engaged, interested in the role. It also helps give you kind of ammunition for those subsequent interviews when say the recruiter gives you insight of, hey, we're building these, wellness features such as for Headspace, we're building kind of, wellness features for consumers and businesses. These are, kind of why we've decided that they're important. This is how we're building them. Like, these are maybe if they can tell you like the tech stack or kind of what the big challenges are or what the team is really looking for. Use those insights in your PM interviews, kind of the subsequent conversations, and try to like fine tune some answers to say like, hey, I am actually a really good person for the need that has been kind of explicitly identified by the recruiting team, and here's why. And then go through, and usually what's very helpful is to go through your resume experience to say, say the team has a need for some product or something on the team. We need someone who has experience, dealing with customers or dealing with these specific types of customers. It could be B2B clients, for example. Would just be very prepared to talk about that in the PM interviews. Like I have helped PM or B2B clients in my previous roles. Here's how. Here's kind of the lessons I learned. Here's my approach. Here's kind of what I'm able to bring to the table at this new company. And so I would definitely try to front load a lot of your own discovery in the recruiter conversations, so that when you come to the PM interview, you're fully ready to address kind of their core needs head on.
And then moving to the next step, like getting the offer, signing the contract, what kind of like best practices you suggest for like the first, like 30, 60 days for like a new product manager at a new company?
Yeah, so I'm assuming everything goes well. You've got the offer. You're excited about the company. I would say, I've seen a handful of 30, 60, 90-day plans. That's pretty common. Usually the first 30 days is just to try to get a really solid understanding of what you're working on. Like what is the product, who uses the product, how does the product really work, who like the team members that you'll be collaborating with, either directly or indirectly. Just try to meet a lot of people and get insight and opportunity on kind of where you can kind of help improve the product. And I think actually what's helpful, if say you're working on a public facing solution, try to embed yourself in customer calls or a client outreach, or even like account management, like kind of like a account like loyalty calls, or just like retention calls, just to see if you can kind of capture the insights that customers have about the problem. And then I think, and when you're getting to like probably your 60 and 90-day plan, you'll probably work on some light features, try to ship a few things quickly. And I would start small, like, hey, I want to do like some small internal features, just to kind of get an understanding of how the teams work. How to kind of, ship, how to work with, say, a program manager or project manager, how really try to understand how engineers like to work. Like, let them inform you how they want kind of their ticket definition and other kind of tactical processes. And then I think you can start developing a thesis on where the opportunity is, probably over the 60, 90-day period. Do a lot of kind of customer outreach, embed yourself in a lot of calls, try to even proactively schedule calls with your customers. Say, hey, where's kind of the opportunity? And then, simultaneously do that on the internal side, like really try to understand from engineers and designers, people who've been working on this product for a while, like where do you think like the big opportunity for this product is? Also talk to business executives, and then towards the end of maybe your 3 month kind of initial ramp up period, you should have a good thesis of hey, what's the roadmap we should be building toward, and then at that point you're kind of off to the races to basically define that roadmap and then implement it.
And moving a little bit to kind of like AI, so kind of like ChatGPT and generative AI tools kind of like came to our life a year ago, I think. I'm curious to hear your thoughts around like how AI is going to impact the role of a product manager. I'm specifically enjoying the part of like documentation, so it's like PRDs and stuff. That's very useful. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts again around like also short and long term impact.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I would say actually that AI won't fundamentally change product management that much. It will certainly kind of be an incremental helping tool, but I don't think you're going to, PMs will be, replaced by AI anytime in the future. Kind of the things you mentioned of being able to, maybe complete PRDs in a quicker way. I think that's certainly one. I think we're using a tool called Otter AI on this call right now. So being able to kind of transcribe and summarize conversations, that's certainly helpful. There's gonna be a lot of tools like that. Also tools that will help you analyze large swaths of user feedback and customer data. I mean, just recently I'm using Anthropic to analyze like a lot of discovery conversations I've had with prospective customers. And so I think that those are very helpful tools, and certainly ones to kind of embed in your toolkit as you're going forward. Beyond that, though, I don't see a ton of like a fundamental shift in product management, like the agile methodologies of basically being able to collaborate with engineering teams, like very frequently being responsive to changing demands from your customers or from internally in the business. I don't see significant change in that. I don't think AI will kind of supplant any of those processes. More so just kind of complement them. So I'd still kind of stick to fundamental, like, develop a very solid understanding of agile methodologies and techniques. What I would say about the AI is I think it will fundamentally shift some of the products that you're working on, and kind of what you as a PM will be focused on. So a lot of the features that you might have built in the past, right now or in the future, there's going to be that feature plus AI, or how do we incorporate AI into our product suite? And then working with AI tooling, I think that's definitely something to look into. Like, AI really kind of at its core is helpful in analyzing large data sets, making information, available with large data sets, and then basically providing prediction off of those large data sets. The common thing I said multiple times is data sets, data sets, data sets. So like being able to understand like how that data is basically being captured, transferred, and stored. Like I think developing an understanding of that will be really helpful as you kind of incorporate or build out AI products. There's going to be a lot more emphasis, I think, on data engineering and that kind of the pipeline tooling, basically the architecture that supports AI features. So I would look into data engineering and kind of how that works, and then some of the issues that you're going to deal with an AI product, or maybe related to data quality and accuracy, especially with like Gen AI solutions. Being able to understand like how that data was generated or where it comes from will help kind of the triaging process if there are issues, and there most certainly will be. So yeah, that's kind of my perspective on AI. I do think I think it will help sharpen PMs. I think my final note on this is that most recently at Headspace, I was analyzing inputs from customers on multiple different teams, multiple different clients. A lot of internal teams had their own kind of priorities and theses of what we should work on. It'll certainly help synthesize a lot of different feedback, probably also enable you to capture a lot more feedback, and then ultimately help you identify what are the true top priorities that my team should be working on, or my product should address. And that'll be very helpful, as you kind of build a product that is, ideally a product solves a customer's need. And so hopefully it really helps kind of crystallize like what's the true need we want to solve, and maybe take a little bit of guesswork out of that. Like, oh, I think one customer said something that sounds right. This will actually add a lot of data and insights to, hopefully give you more confidence that you're prioritizing the right work and working on the right thing.
I will conclude this kind of like first part of the conversation, and the second part is opening the discussion to questions from students. So feel free, everyone, to open cameras and raise your hand and ask questions. Yeah, I see there are a lot of questions on the chat. So yeah, like if some of you just want to open the microphone.
Hi, Nathan. This is Martin. I can kick off my question. By the way, thank you so much for joining today's call and sharing your insight of being a PM. To me, I can see the overall trend of being a PM is being more specified. Meaning, like, I think one factor is that more and more tech companies are being very successful. They scale up their products, and the need of having more PM to manage features from just a product being a feature and a feature within features could also, like, the need of that would be continue to grow. But at the same time, I also see that the specification of a PM on overseeing one particular scope is kind of bringing challenges for us. Like, if we want to be a PM and we want to understand the overall business model and also what we try to achieve as a whole product, is challenging, because we are kind of focusing so much of our one particular corner, and then not having enough opportunity to see the big picture. What are some of your advice that for us trying to grow in this role in long term, to kind of gain that understanding, appreciation from the high level and from the comprehensive perspective?
Yeah, interesting question. I would say, if you are if your title is product manager, right? Like, you're likely going to be working on kind of a narrow set of features, or in, one product line, for example. If you want to kind of expand your scope, a couple of things I would recommend. Like, first, I'd really try to start, whoever your manager might be, they'll probably be a senior PM or a director of PM or something like that. See if you can kind of embed yourself a little bit in their processes and schedule to see like kind of what they're working on. If you're a PM working on features, your manager will likely be working on, roadmap and vision, and then basically C-suite collaboration with the various teams to try to understand what are the priorities, where do you want to go. try to get as much of a grasp of those processes as possible. And then, once you feel like you are successfully able to, manage your own, product roadmap, try to branch out and branch out. I've always enjoyed when PMs have expressed interest, at least the ones that I've worked with and have worked for me, have expressed interest in kind of expanding their scope of responsibilities. So say taking on multiple product lines or multiple, kind of expanding kind of the way they can contribute. That's probably the best way to kind of see the broader picture. A lot of conversations. Also, this is something I had realized from being in a few big companies. Try to read very thoroughly AOPs and like quarterly plans, like annual operating plans and quarterly plans. There's a lot of very interesting insights into what the kind of company's kind of strategic priorities are over a given quarter or a given year. And that's very helpful for you to align your roadmap, or making sure you're building towards what the company needs, right? And then if you have conversations, it's actually usually pretty easy to reach people who are in higher up in a tech company to like understand like why are we doing this? Like, well, what's the justification for our AOP? Oftentimes there's like office hours. Like, try to get like an understanding of where that AOP is coming from. And then you can use that in your own roadmap, but also to hopefully help you can kind of give a bird's eye view of what the company is doing and why it's doing it.
Thank you.
Anyone feel free to jump in here.
Hi, Nathan. Nice to meet you. I'm Clyde. I'm really curious about, and I'm a loyal Headspace user since, I guess, 2017. I'm really curious about, the more strategic decision-making side of it, because you mentioned that when you're making decisions, creating a vision for a roadmap for the product, you do kind of take in a lot of inputs from different teams as well as consumers, as well as, your internal teams, right? How do you make decisions for the product, specifically in the case of Headspace, in terms of adding more features versus reducing some of the features? The reason why I'm asked this specifically for Headspace is, as a kind of meditation app, I assume there are more specific user needs and pain points that are not really relevant to other products, but might be highly relevant to Headspace. So I'm just really interested in this kind of unique case of a product that's quite unique itself.
Yeah, happy to take it. I think you'll probably hear us a little bit about product management. It's more art than science, and I think there's certainly some truth to that. How we kind of manage our roadmap, and then which features to prioritize at Headspace, for example. It was really kind of a collection of interests and kind of a prioritization of interest from a couple different stakeholder groups. There was obviously customers, so keep a very close eye to what the customers are wanting, and also that includes kind of like broad market research. Headspace is not the only one in this space. There's other competitors, say like a Calm, see if they're kind of working on features that we find compelling, or others like that are using a lot. There's kind of internal priority identification. So teams like the engineering team, they'll likely come with a lot of opportunities for like scalable fixes, and kind of fixing tech debt and making sure the product is more robust, because that's really kind of where they're focused on. And then also you'll get a lot of insights from the executives and kind of the business leaders of, hey, here's what the company needs to build, because these are the company KPIs, and we need to hit these, and these are the features that we think will help that. So your role as kind of a PM is to synthesize all of that feedback to say, hey, what do the customers want? What does the business want? What does the kind of engineering team think we can build and support? And try to create a roadmap that kind of effectively balances both short-term and long-term needs. So, in the short term, you need to maintain customer success and also customer product reliability. But in the long term, you need to develop new features or new capabilities that will hopefully expand kind of revenue opportunities, or kind of expand opportunities for retention and growth in the long term. So, this might be a little bit more tactical than your question originally set out, but I generally try to work something closer to like 60-40, where I do 60% of my work is long-term features and like long-term infrastructure to set up to kind of support scale and growth, and then about 40% is kind of near and short-term, either like bug resolution, bug fixing, very quick features that teams or customers have bubbled up. maybe to support like a sales funnel or something like that. And so that has generally I found to be pretty helpful, but yeah, it really kind of depends on the company context here, and hopefully that helps.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Andrew, I don't know how this is. I feel bad because there's people asking questions in the chat, or do I just jump in? I could.
I could start reading questions from the chat. Well, Almog, what would you like me to do?
I think if you're writing questions in the chat, feel free to open the mic if you can and ask. But I think it's best like if we can have a conversation around it. So if you can open the microphone, that would be ideal.
Okay, folks, open the microphone, make it easier. Okay, so Nathan, my question is trying to understand like what you think are some of the biggest lessons that you learned in leading the platform merger between just Headspace and Ginger. And what I mean about like the biggest lessons are just when I was kind of going through your LinkedIn, there's a couple of different themes that I saw. Like the first one is like being in a director of product management role and stepping into leading a team. I'm curious how you navigated that sort of challenge, and not just the actual execution of merging those platforms, but now you are structuring the team and stepping into that leadership role of doing that. Like, talk us through that transition. And then maybe the other lesson is like, with an integration of a company like that, like what are some of the just biggest issues that you come up with, and like how have you dealt with them? So maybe that's like those are two different questions if I look at it. Like, first question around like evolving in product leadership within that type of a company. The second question being around, yeah, just how do you deal with such large integrations like that and some of the biggest problems? And I'm sorry if you answered some of this already earlier.
Totally fine. I think on the first part of kind of evolving in product leadership, I think the evolution actually feels quite natural, where you've really developed a lot of fundamentals and you're able to kind of take more and more responsibility. And then when you kind of join a company in, whatever senior role, really try to understand who your colleagues are and who you're going to be working closely with. And then try to establish very good relations with them, open lines of communication, and have very frequent check-ins. I think that's especially important when you start off, just to like make sure everyone's kind of on the same page, like what you're building towards. Try to make things as collaborative as possible. And then, hopefully that helps set you up for success and kind of whatever role you're in, including, more senior roles. I think on the second part of your question, this is kind of the meatier one of going into merging different services or different companies. This is probably one of the most challenging parts of a product manager's, and probably anyone's like a career in tech, is merging companies. I actually had gone through, I'll say this, unfortunately, I've gone through this multiple times. Before this, I was at Hulu. Hulu was merged into Disney, to Disney Streaming, which is an extremely messy process. And then at Headspace, Headspace I had joined them after they had completed the financial merger, basically merged the balance sheets with Headspace and Ginger. And then I was really brought on to help kind of merge their kind of the business services between the two. And you can imagine, like, there's different teams, there are different locations, they have different tech stacks, different processes of kind of moving and transferring data. There's just a lot of different pieces that you have to kind of map and understand, and then prioritize and then kind of prioritize what does the future look like between these two services. Which you have to, like, how do these two services, fit in with each other, like both, from a customer standpoint and then from a technical standpoint. And then one thing I would say, and I've learned this from, my own personal hard experience, is on like how you actually do stuff like that. It's very important, I think, especially where a lot of these companies are remote or people are not in a single location, to try to get like a very clear top level understanding of like, hey, what are we building towards? And then very strategically identifying all of the kind of decision makers in those business units that will be helping you. So say, hey, I need to work with the Ginger director of product to merge, basically to merge their service with mine. Now I need to basically like become best friends with this person, sit down with them, understand their roadmap, align our roadmaps, and make sure that we have dependency. If we have dependencies, they can be quickly addressed. make sure at a very tactical level, like, okay, actually, let me see like your roadmaps and sprints and like engineering allocation so that there's a confidence that we can kind of both build towards this shared objective. And then you're going to have to get basically top level buy-in to enforce that, because there's always going to be issues where say the Ginger team or Headspace team, like, oh, something came up, like we need to focus this is an acute problem, and that has a big impact on kind of your long-term ability to deliver kind of the broad vision of, say, this merger. That was an issue I definitely dealt with, and one thing that I found very helpful is don't do any big meetings, only do very small meetings with the key stakeholders that you're going to be working with, and make sure that that alignment is like actually truly enforced and like driven down to the engineering resource level. Like make sure there's staff to do what they're committed to do. Make sure from director of product to VP of product to CPO, everyone's aligned on what each team has to do. And like there's frequent like both high level and low level check-ins to make sure that you're delivering. I think for big projects, especially in a remote context, it's very hard to manage those. So you kind of have to like micromanage them to an extent. And there has to be like broad visibility across a company that you're actually building towards a solution, and that you're delivering towards that solution as well. So that's kind of basically a little bit of one of my war stories.
Thank you so much, I think, for speaking so specifically. And what you're making me appreciate is just whoever is setting up the sort of product organization and how it's structured so that you can communicate and it's easier to resolve through. Like that seems like it's just so important. And maybe that's more of like a company strategy thing of just the chief product officer organizing the teams in a way where you're not having to reach out to someone that it's like, who's Nathan? Like, why is he reaching out to me about this feature or what we're working on?
Yeah, I mean,
So
honestly, you probably have to do both. But you're going to have to get the CPO to kind of dictate the roadmap and vision. Then you're going to have to reach out to your colleagues, saying, "Hey, it's me. Like, your CPO the CPO probably mentioned me. Let's talk. Let's sync multiple times per week for the foreseeable future to make sure that we're delivering the solution."
Thank you.
So I do want to be mindful of your time. So let me know if you have like time for one more question.
Yeah, sure. I can take another one.
Okay. So if anyone wants to open the microphone, ask a question, feel free to go ahead.
Yeah, if I may, Jose Rodrigues, I'm actually in Portugal right now. I just wanted to ask you. I understand from what you've said that the role of the product management is intrinsically internal to the company. So I just wanted to check out your views on, for instance, having PMs which are freelance or relying this capability on outsourcing companies.
Okay, sorry, I think I misunderstood the internal side. I say actually PMs work a ton with external customers and clients, but I think now I understand your perspective is more on, I guess, hiring contract product managers. Is that right?
Yeah.
I mean, I actually don't really have a strong opinion about it. I think if you have an acute need, say, hey, we need to build a feature, build some products, and our team is not staffed to do it, it's probably fine to bring someone in from outside. I think you can find success with kind of contract PMs. I've worked with contract PMs in the past. I think the only issue there is that there's usually a bit of uptime so that they actually know like kind of what they're building and who kind of all the players are. And there's usually some communication issues, just, they're not really embedded. Usually there's like data tooling separation, they're not in the tools, or it's a little bit harder to reach them. So there are some, modest complications, but if any company has an acute need, I don't know if that would be a problem. Is that kind of your question? Like, is it challenging to bring on contract PMs?
Yeah, I mean, I see the PM work to be, a lot to be done also internally inside the company, managing all of these stakeholders, and I always feel that contractors have an additional barrier to get by these. So just wondering what your past experience on this was.
Yeah, I mean, kind of as I mentioned, there are modest barriers usually on like tooling, communication, and uptime. Getting kind of contract PMs trained, but I think it's fine. Companies do it all the time. Like I've worked with them, and it's not a let's say a major blocker.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry, I could probably do one more if you want, Almog.
Yeah, please do. I saw that Vineeth had a great question on the chat. I don't know if he's like still here. Vineeth, if you're here, I saw you wrote a great question in the chat.
Yeah, hey, yeah, thanks, Nathan, for this. It's been super insightful, especially with the interviews and tips on the resume and everything. I'm kind of shifting gears towards like the behavioral aspect and I mean the user behavior aspects. Trying to understand how do you like work with changing the behaviors and habits of users, especially with an app like Headspace. And in general, in the consumer space, it's really hard to bring in a new habit and like get people accustomed to that, especially when there are so many fallback options, right? So how do you make that happen?
Yeah, great question. I think at a broad level, most tech companies, at least the ones that kind of monetize your time on app effectively, are looking to do like one of two things. They're looking to either boost engagement, so how many times a day you're using the service, or they're looking to boost your retention. Basically, how long do you use the service? So, they don't want you to use it once and one and done. I've worked on a lot of features like that, both at Headspace, Hulu, other companies as well, really trying to give more value for like create more value in the app or the service for customers. And then the process of identifying what the value is, that really is a lot of conversations with various customers. In terms of, I think the second part of your question is about specific examples. So I'll give you kind of a few. So on Headspace, we want to create a very engaging and personalized experience because our thesis is that if you find content that's very helpful to you, that you'll keep coming back to the app, you use it more. And so we worked on a lot of personalization algorithms for the type of content that you see, and even you could even identify like the mood that you were in, and we could provide content kind of based on that to kind of help you where you are. And then on the kind of retention side, certainly Headspace and a lot of other companies have issues with, kind of long-term retention. We were looking for ways of kind of building habits. So I think this kind of answers your question of how you like modify behavior. We were looking into like habit formation, like what are best practices we've seen in our industry and also just like broadly in consumer tech of creating kind of habitual use of a product. What we ultimately settled on was basically kind of like a daily check-in type service, like kind of basically a feature that like, hey, come for your daily meditation. We make it very easy, very quick. It's very sequential. So there's kind of a little bit of a gamification of like, oh, I've done like a 5-day streak. If you ever use Duolingo, they're probably the king at this. We're like, oh man, I want to break my streak with Duolingo. And so we were definitely inspired by features like that to create kind of repetitive and recurring use, and hopefully delivering value at the same time.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have more questions? So you'll let us know when when you need to conclude the discussion.
Yeah, I got a call too, but I could probably do one more question. So
okay.
I see Shiv Dude has their hand up, so go for it.
Hey, hi, Nathan.
Hi.
Thanks a lot for this session. It has been really insightful. So my question is a little granular, actually. Just want to dive deep into it. When you have a set of features, how do you kind of prioritize them based on the customer insight? Do you ask the customer that these are the set of features that you need for us to incorporate in the product? How do we prioritize it? Do you ask the customers the priority for a feature per se, or do you go back to your engineering team and discuss the priority? So how does that work?
Yeah. So I wouldn't prioritization, again, this is kind of the art and science thing. It's based on multiple factors. There is kind of the business need, there's the customer need, there's kind of the internal capacity So say the customer is like, yeah, I really want this, and the engineering team says, great, it'll take us 5 years to build it. You probably wouldn't build it. You'd have to prioritize something that's much more feasible, and you have to figure out kind of what that trade-off is at each company. How I prioritize a lot of features is really on the application to a business need or business KPI. Like, do I think this feature that the customer requested is actually going to increase their, how much they spend on our platform, how basically if it contributes to engagement or retention, is that impactful? Is this going to meet one of our kind of core defined KPIs of like revenue growth or user growth? So I have to kind of align it with that, and also kind of the capacity of our team to build it. Like, is this something? Could we build a feature that is 5% less effective and 95% less of the time? Like, that would probably be a better use of our resourcing as well. And so you take that as input of like, well, hey, the customer, hopefully even with some AI tools, you're saying, here's the top 5 customer priorities for our features. Like, this is what they want, or they want to see built and want to see improved. That's very helpful. And then you take that information and basically sync with your engineering team and think, all right, can you give me level of effort sizing on each of these tasks to see how long it would actually take to build these things? And then map those tasks to like the potential impact to a core business KPI. And then you'll probably find out like, oh, like the top priority is you can do a 10% lift in revenue, but it takes, X amount of time. Whereas the second priority provides a 9% lift in revenue, but it takes 1/5 the time. Like, that's probably where you want to focus your time and effort on the places that kind of give you the most bang for the buck.
Thank you so much.
Awesome.
There is one more question in the chat if you have like 1 more minute. So it says, I wanted to ask how important it is to talk about products from personal experiences. Does it make a difference if we try to explain why we like or dislike a product from our own experience of using a product?
Yeah, who wrote that question? Oh, is it? Okay.
It's in the chat, yeah.
Got it. Yes, yeah, I see it. Yeah, how important is it to talk about products from personal experiences? I assume this is the context of like an interview or something like that?
Sorry, I'm having a really bad throat. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
I think it's helpful. You'll get a lot of questions on like, why, tell me about your favorite product, why is it useful, or what do you like most about it? And a lot of those questions are going to be just kind of quizzing your product knowledge of like, why is this product good effectively? Like, what does it meet the user need? Does it meet kind of defined use cases well? I think, if you can kind of speak from experience, like say like, hey, here's the use cases that I have, here's how this app or feature meets those use cases, I think that's kind of helpful insight. And then the second part, doesn't make a difference if you like to try. It makes some difference. I think a lot of the interviews have really focused on kind of the opportunities at that specific company that you haven't worked at yet. So, I wouldn't say this is like the most important thing. If you have some experience with their product, that could be helpful. Say you're applying to Headspace, you are an avid Headspace user. If you have kind of a thesis on what you really like or areas of opportunity for Headspace, it'd be interesting, not critical, but just kind of interesting to have that in a conversation of like, hey, here's like some, if it's relevant to your role too, like if it's a totally different team, probably not super helpful, but like if you're working on kind of the consumer facing side, like as a consumer, I can see from experience, here are features that I can think of that consumers like me would use. I would say that those are nice to haves, but definitely not kind of the critical kind of deciding factor in your interview.
Thank you for doing that. Just to follow up, if someone just keeps saying that, I had an experience and this is what I like, and when you say a lot of does that not give a wrong idea that you're not thinking about the customer from a broad perspective? It's just one isolated experience. I don't know this. I've just had some conversations sometime with some hiring managers, and they not that they did not like when I was talking about certain product from my own experiences. They did, but I think they expected from like a high level view. If you know what I mean. So I'm just trying to understand, is it a good practice to even do that, or just talk about it from like a general customer point of view?
Yeah, again, I don't think it's I'm sorry about your own experience. I don't think that's a maybe a very common one. If you are talking about your own experiences, maybe try to bring in like other customers that I've talked to as well. So it's not just kind of your own personal experience. That might be helpful. But again, I wouldn't view that, and just from my own perspective, I would not view you expressing your own concern or your own experience with the app in a negative way. Because how would you know the other customer experiences? You're not doing user interviews or discovery with them. I wouldn't expect that, at least. If you did, I mean, that really shows a lot of extra effort, though.
I see, that makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you so much for the extra time. I sincerely appreciate that, and thank you so much for sharing the incredibly practical, wisdom with us. I've been on many discussions, and this is by far one of the best that I've heard in terms of practical, tips and wisdom. So thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for joining us. And have a wonderful weekend. And again, thank you so much for the extra time. I really appreciate that. So many questions because that was a great discussion. So again, all credit to you. Thank you so much for your time.
Happy to be here. Thanks, everyone.